Welcome to the Backyard Professor Responds videos. Happy Veterans Day to all of our veterans. My way of honoring our veterans is I'm going to do a commentary on Coulthart. Ross Coulthart just did an interview with Tim Gallaudet, who is going to be one of the witnesses on the 13th before Congress on the UAP issue, and it looks like a splendid interview. I have not watched it yet. I'm going to try something new here. I'm going to go cold turkey. I'm going to just comment before knowing what anything about that they're talking about and give my impressions and commentary and share with you why I think Tim is going to be a very good witness on the 13th. So let's get started. I will share the screen. I jumped in. I passed his introduction. I want to get right to his beginning discussion with Gallaudet,
which he tells me is not intended to be an exhaustive memoir, but rather to provide lessons on leadership during challenging circumstances, which is quite apt, frankly, for his involvement with UAP at the moment. Tim's, in a few days, going to be giving evidence before the Oversight and Accountability Committee in the US House of Reps. It's quite historic to see somebody of his seniority, somebody who's been at a very high rank inside the US military, speaking candidly on what he knows on UAPs. So I guess, Tim, my first question to you is, are you a little bit nervous about this appearance? How do you feel?
Well, thank you, Ross. It's great to be on your show. And no, I'm not nervous at all. Actually, it's probably could be 10th, 12th hearing. So I've testified a few times in front of Congress. And actually, my previous testimonies have been under a little more contentious circumstances where I was trying to defend a budget that maybe the Congress members weren't happy about. So this is not worrisome. There's bipartisan support for UAP disclosure, and I'm proud and happy to be a champion for that.
I like that very much. He's proud and happy to be part of the UAP disclosure team, and he's a retired Admiral in the Navy. And this is the type of veterans that we love honoring. We love honoring all of the veterans of all of the wars. And we're hoping that our Veterans Administration continues trying to improve the treatment here in our country for our veterans who fight for our freedoms. So that's my rah-rah-ree. Let's keep going.
You, at any stage, have somebody come and sidle up to you quietly in a corridor somewhere and say, I say, Tim, it'd be really good if you just piped down a little bit on this issue. You know, stop rocking the boat on the UAP issue. I guess as a journalist, I'm very used to people from, say, the defense or intelligence community coming up to somebody like me, a journo operating at senior level, and saying, listen, there's things you don't know about that it would be really helpful if you could just not focus too much on that issue because it's raising issues of national security sensitivity. Has anyone ever given you the tap to say, please don't rock the boat on the UAP issue?
Well, let me give you two stories here. First off, I've had numerous people who were in the government come to me and say, I need to tell you my story. Here's what I saw. And these are people that in all types of different branches of the U.S. government there were witnesses, there were experiencers of the phenomena that wanted to come to me because of my speaking out, knowing I have some kind of authority and credibility, and they trusted me. And I was the first person they ever came to. I'm talking about submarine officers, former aircraft carrier, naval personnel, and even people from my former agency, NOAA, who served on our ships who had experiences. So there's that, which is fascinating to me.
So this is not just a few odd country bumpkins out seeing the UAPs. Richard Dolan a few months ago gave a report where he has calculated over 50,000 UAP visitations worldwide every single year, and that appears to be growing, which is remarkably interesting because it's not just an event here and then 3 or 4 or 5 months later an event there and then 4 years of silence and another minor event down in South America or wherever up in Alaska. This is happening, it seems to me, steady and routinely, and this is yet another credible testimony that things are happening. And so this makes this even all the more intriguing, and it gives him witness power before Congress if he can bring these out as well. So this is really going to be a good witness at the trial, at the congressional hearing, trial. Yeah. Let's keep going.
And encouraging for me to continue doing what I'm doing, knowing that I'm giving people some inspiration and courage to come out. But the other aspect about people or anybody in the government saying, Tim, tamp it down. No one's ever done that. But I did visit with the Department of Defense's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office last year. And now, first of all, they're under new leadership. And I make no comments on the current new leadership. I've not met with the new director. I understand there might be a change of course, which I would be happy to see. But when I met with the prior leadership, and they invited me, and in fact, they said, hey, we want to share with you what we're doing. I was a bit disappointed because they didn't tell me to not say what I was saying. What they did is they tried to defend a lot of the false narratives they were promoting. And we all know this. We know the historical records report that they issued, that Chris Mellon subsequently in the debrief wrote an article basically chastising and calling out. And they defended that tooth and nail. And I couldn't believe it, actually. I thought, because Chris did a good job. We all know his credibility. And they basically proceeded to carry out an influence operation on me because they know I have access and influence. And so they work to persuade me, oh, this report we wrote is solid, incredible. And I asked him, what'd you think of Chris Mellon's article? And they told me he was off the mark and in more colorful language. And I couldn't believe it, to be honest with you. And they defended their approach. And it was clear to me this was part of their overall, we know this, disinformation campaign against people like us who are coming out to advocate for UAP disclosure.
Okay, this is important because this is why we need these hearings to take place. This is why good, credible people such as this gentleman is showing up at these hearings and saying, we are aware of the false narrative. We have witnesses showing the narrative is false. This is really what's happening. For us as the public, that is why these hearings are so important. That's why we hope to not be disappointed again. Now, if Congress will cooperate and sink some teeth into this and put certain people under oath to pledge to tell the truth and get to the bottom of this and regain their power of oversight, that is the ultimate goal here. I get it. There's a lot of skepticism out there, but this interview heartens me up to this point. I am really excited to see what else this gentleman is going to talk about. Hopefully, this is the material that he's going to testify about. If not, he needs to bring material this powerful forward for the Congress to open their eyes. Our government is asleep at the wheel. In the meantime, that doesn't mean all of the UAP situations, events, happenings, and experiencings worldwide are phony. I get why skeptics don't want to believe because it's not happening to me. That's not a basis for making a judgment just because it's not happening to everyone all at once. So let's keep listening. This is getting very interesting very fast. People are coming out of the woodwork to this man in government agencies.
Can I ask you this, Tim? Why? Why would a body that has been essentially ordered by Congress to do proper investigations into anomalous phenomena and to report back to Congress and the American public, why would it do what I think we both agree it has been doing, and I do hope under the new leadership it does change its tone? Why would they seek to disinform and manipulate not only American public opinion, but also to try and influence somebody with your reputation and background?
Well, first off, yes, this is troubling, of course. Now, I can only speculate because they didn't tell me, of course. But I've been in the government for almost 40 years, and I understand. And I had a clearance. I still have a clearance actually now. But I believe that office. Now you're right, and here's an important distinction. Congress gave them an unclassified mandate. They did not give them a classified mandate. That the legislation said, let's go and report on and study the occurrences of UAP. And they've done that to an extent, but this historical records report was disinformation, as clear as day. And so that is not in their charter. And that's what's so troubling, is they're not following the intent of Congress. And that's why, thus, you're seeing hearings get scheduled and members are not too happy. Now, and hopefully the new leadership is a sign that, okay, they're going to get on board with that. My understanding is this, and now the director at the time, the acting director, came to me and he made it very clear to himself. He said, I'm a Title 50 guy. And what he means is that this counterintelligence was his expertise. And it's I assume and I assess, I guess, that they want to protect American national security interests. They don't want, and again, I'm speculating, okay, but I know how the government operates. They don't want, and this is why we've classified UAP in history, because we don't want our adversaries to know our weaknesses.
Okay, same old, same old. We've been told that. I get that. But what the American government appears to be missing is the UAPs are also showing up in Russia, China, Australia, South America, the UK, etc. So if America doesn't get on board, what happens if other countries do? What happens if Russia and China begin sharing their understanding and retrofitting and making UAP technology because they've realized the value of teaming up instead of trying to convince America to come clean? Why would any other country need America to tell them when they are having their own? That gets real sticky real quick, in my opinion. So we need to make sure our Congress has the power. That's why the Citizens for Disclosure group that I belong to is pressing this issue. Some of our top officers in this group are going to be at these hearings, and they are going to be asking some tough questions and putting pressure for the Congress to get with it. And this is very exciting news. None of us are just sitting back doing nothing. It's not seeable in the public. I understand all that too. I see that. But that does not mean it's not being worked on behind the scenes, as this Rear Admiral in the Navy, the veteran we are helping honor on Veterans Day today, is indicating. He's well aware, as many others are, that the narrative is false and they are fighting it. So this is good news. I get it. This is old news, but we're in 2024. This interview happened 2 hours ago, and they are still working on getting disclosure. That's good. No one's given up. So this is an exciting basis to continue the discussion, sharing everything we know about UAPs, people's experiences, visiting some of the former historical aspects of UAPs to see what extra patterns we've been missing, etc. I get it. It takes years. We're willing to do that because we want to know the truth of this. That's why we do what we do. So
that what we can and can't see, that we cannot control our airspace and water space. And I get that. That's important. But with the Schumer amendment, that genie's out of the bottle. Okay. So we really need to set up and say, okay, look, let's not disclose the classified information technology-wise that we're learning about UAP. I'm okay with that. We don't want that to go to the American public or our adversaries. But the American public has a right to know the new nature of reality we know, and that the Defense Department and the intelligence community has realized and has evidence of. That's not fair to the American public or the global citizenry at large. So I think this is what has to come out.
Now, his saying playing fair kind of, since when has the government ever been fair, right? So you kind of got to say, well, yeah, I mean, that's, in a way, that's pie in the sky. But the genie's out of the bottle. That's an important comment from my point of view, because we know the UAP situation is happening. Okay, so it's not like this is going to come as a shock to our system that, oh my gosh, I didn't know UAPs were real. Tens of thousands of people are having their experiences right now, whether the government likes it or not. When these people start coming together with the academia who are becoming more interested in it, Diane Pasulka and Chris Mellon, he's in the government end of this, but other people are exploring consciousness, like Hoffman that I did a video on yesterday. The various different views that are coming forward and catching academia's interest, and the more books coming out, etc. We're not going to wait for the government. What we want is our Congress to be empowered to have oversight over the big military industrial complex. They do not by law have a right to hide information from Congress. This is what these hearings are hoping to do. In the meantime, we are going to continue exploring and enlightening ourselves as much as we can, cross-checking all of the YouTube videos, doing our own reading, attending the academic conferences on this, etc. This is why I have some excitement in this field. It's not a dead field. It's not over. In fact, it's barely just beginning. So this is exciting for me. I like this so far very much. Good interview, Ross Coulthart, one of my new heroes.
So, Tim, you've told this story to Reality Check before, but for the benefit of our audience who don't know how you came to the UAP issue, it's one of the stories you tell in your book, and I'd love you to tell it again. What was it that sparked your awareness that, frankly, we are not alone?
Right. Yeah. It's a giant story, right? You know, because this is what we're talking about. We know and we have evidence that we are not alone in the universe in terms of intelligent life. It's insane. And why is there not more intellectual curiosity on this? Well, it's because the government's covered it up. But ultimately, my journey started out first when I was the superintendent of the Naval Observatory. And I worked with a team of astrophysicists, and I learned how large the universe is. It's 100 billion to 400 billion stars in the Milky Way alone. We know many of them have habitable planets around them. And that's just in this galaxy. And there's up to maybe 1 trillion other galaxies in the observable universe. It's just, space is so vast.
Okay, I want to break in here because I was kind of criticized the other day, and justifiably so, in one of my former videos where I said there are trillions of stars in each galaxy and trillions of galaxies. I was corrected, and so I'm here to admit, yeah, okay, 1 to 400 billion stars in our galaxy. That gives us millions of planets like Earth in just our galaxy. But because of the new and improved space telescopes, again, it's tangential to the UAP, but it meshes in with the overall knowledge that we're not crazy for thinking intelligent non-human life is here now, because we know there are trillions of galaxies. We know some of those galaxies are billions of years older than ours. If there was an intelligent race out there, they have billions of years longer in their existence to develop ways to understand physics in a greater way than we do and arrive here. That was one of the main criticisms against the idea that they're here. They can't traverse the great distances of space. We honestly just don't know that. With our current understanding in physics, we can't do that. This is true, but that has nothing to do with whether they can. And I agree, my bias is the interstellar travel. I am looking into the multidimensional thesis as well as the theory of them already being here on Earth before we even evolved. That's a serious potential possibility. But again, I find it very cool that he's bringing this up because our overall general knowledge of the universe has been expanding by leaps and bounds because of the James Webb Space Telescope, because of the Hubble Space Telescope. With that new and acquired knowledge, we can reassess probabilities of intelligent life out there. And it's looking good now, especially with the Drake equation. So this is cool that he's reviewing this to help us see that today is a new day. Yesteryear is over. We don't have to keep thinking in the old paradigm with our old knowledge and our old limitations. Things are moving forward. That's the look. I'm not the one that's making this up. I'm not the one. I'm just reporting what I'm seeing. If you think it's all made up, we are not standing still in our intellectual capability of understanding how the probabilities have changed. Now we need to reassess things and begin taking in, instead of ridiculing those who are having the UAP experiences, begin taking their stories in and looking for patterns and ideas and themes. This is all a process. It's not going to be just an overnight, oh yeah, hey, by the way, the UAPs are here. That doesn't tell us near as much as if we acquire all these stories from people and begin looking at patterns, themes, and ideas. That advances our knowledge better than when the government's going to come out and say, okay, yeah, they're here. That's not going to do much. But at least it's going to open things up a little better if they can let whistleblowers have protection so that they can describe the unclassified information. And then I get it. Yeah, they're classifying absolutely everything, ridiculously so. I know, because they're so paranoid, the government, that is. So this is what gives me hope for Chris Bledsoe saying the lady told him, the UFO told him, oh, there's a big amount of knowledge coming. There's a new knowledge, is how she put it, coming in 2026. We'll just have to wait and see. Yeah. If you want to say it's fake, go ahead, but we're not there yet, so we don't know. So this is exciting. I'm just saying, this veteran that we are honoring today on Veterans Day is doing this correctly for us, the public. He's showing us today's a new day, and there is exciting things coming forward. So let's jump on this and learn together. This is what it's all about right here. This is why we're alive, to look into the mysteries. And we have fabulous men like this gentleman. I love this.
It's just so naive and myopic to think that we're the only intelligent species and a species that's developed the means to travel between celestial bodies. Avi Loeb of the Galileo Project, and I'm a research affiliate with him, articulates this extremely well about the scales of time and space. And it's really ridiculous to assume we're just it. But so I had that sort of awareness and openness from my experience there as the superintendent of the Naval Observatory, learning about astrophysics. Then fast forward a few more years, as a one-star admiral in charge of all the Navy meteorologists and oceanographers, I am overseeing these people who are on aircraft carriers and exercises and operations around the world, a lot of them on aircraft carriers. And at that point, when the Theodore Roosevelt was conducting an exercise off the U.S. East Coast, and aviators were seeing all these UAP, aviators like Ryan Graves, I didn't know about it until I get this email on the Navy's secret network. And I'm the chief meteorologist of the Navy at the time. And so my aerographers and meteorologists are forecasting weather on that ship and every other ship on the Navy that does air operations. And I get this email, and the title of it, in all caps on the secret network, Urgent Safety of Flight Issue. And in the body of the email, the text just merely read, hey, if any of you know what these are, tell me ASAP. We're having numerous near mid-air collisions, and we might have to shut down the exercise. And that got my attention because this is my job, safety of flight. And attached to the email was the now leaked and declassified Go Fast video. And my socks were knocked off. I mean, of course, because I've never seen something like this. I wasn't read into the programs and all that. And of course, I knew immediately that was us because we don't do test and development in training ranges. It's when an aircraft carrier goes through a training workup to go then deploy to, for example, the Arabian Gulf, we don't do test and evaluation during those things because it is so compressed. The combatant commanders want the ship to get out there on time. The aviators, every pilot's got to get certified to fly on the carrier. Okay, it is stressful. We don't mess around in the U.S. Navy on that kind of thing. That's why we have test ranges in different places to do that.
That's cool background for me, if none of the rest of you. I didn't realize the extent. I didn't realize that they don't do tests like this in training missions. That helps give credence and credibility to these videos of these UAPs. If anyone would know, it would be this man that, hey, that's not part of our routine. That can't possibly be us. So again, more new information on these very popular, very famous or infamous videos already. So, and this is straight from the horse's mouth, as it were, which gives it validity in my book. And so the rest of you can choose to believe or disbelieve. But I think this is a fabulous interview. This is why we keep interviewing the same people over and over. It's why we keep commenting on interviews. It's why we keep commenting on books. Maybe there's something we're missing. This is exciting to me.
So I just wanted to, I suppose, underline the point that you're making there. What you're anticipating is the explanation that many debunkers offer, that this must be secret US technology, that the Go Fast, the Tic Tac, and I've forgotten the name of the other one momentarily, but that those three videos that were released eventually by the New York Times, by Leslie and Ralph Blumenthal, that those videos were somehow some secret program that the US was suppressing. From your understanding of the secret world and how it works, the US would never test technology like that without giving authorization to, say, the Rear Admiral in charge of the fleet that you were with and that the Theodore Roosevelt was with.
Not a chance. And when you look at the whole body of those observations, remember the pilots talking about a fleet of them, and there were different observations. There was the gimbal, the Go Fast. It's not a chance in the world. And let's go back to the Nimitz, okay, with Dave Fravor and Alex Dietrich, and that again. This is what's even more ridiculous. So when I met with Aero, okay, and this has to go out there. They were trying to throw some discredit on the reports of the Nimitz Tic Tac incident, okay. They questioned me. Oh, this might have been U.S. tech. You've heard that narrative out there. Maybe it was a submarine. And you talk to David Fravor and Alex Dietrich, who I consider my friends now, who served on aircraft carriers like I did. And all the explanation of instantaneous acceleration and meeting at the cap point that they knew was that demonstrated a knowledge of what they knew and intelligent control. This is not U.S. tech, okay? Not a chance. We don't test stuff in training ranges, and clearly the performance characteristics of the technology was nothing like we could design. And I trust them, and they were the observers. So when those who are trying to throw a wrench in that narrative they are so off the mark, and it's actually just a clear sign they're stretching this disinformation effort.
Fantastic, because I've seen videos of idiots out there who are trying to disprove these events, these experiences. They are part of the disinformation campaign. This man is not, and he is the one who knows. This is fantastic. I'm glad I really didn't see this beforehand, because I'm thrilled that he said what he just said. You people who accept the disinformation, we're really hoping you can begin turning to people like Gallaudet and Chris Mellon and others, so that you can begin to see more clearly. You're being deceived. I get it. Everyone says, no, Shirts, you're the moron being deceived. Not when I've got men like this, Ross Coulthart, and other valid witnesses and people at the events. They're seeing this too. And then others come to them secretly and say, you know what? We're not telling you to calm it down. We too have had the experiences. What can happen? Just imagine this with me. What can happen when we can begin putting all the civilian information into this as well from around the world of people having these experiences? What might we learn? So the potential for this is huge. It's got me excited. I'm really enjoying this interview. I hope you guys are. Let's keep going. This is fantastic to hear that from such a fabulous source. Thank you, dear veteran, for your service. We honor you today with all our hearts full of gratitude for what you do for us. Sincerely, yes.
So one thing I also want to get the detail from you on is that CIPRANet message, that secret message that came across your email. It was essentially framed as a safety of flight issue, wasn't it? Because this was essentially the commander of that battle fleet wanting to know, did anybody know about these objects? What the hell were they?
Right. So the message I got was from the operations officer who worked for the commander, who was a 4-star. The operations officer was a 2-star, and he sent it to all the subordinate commanders who were 1 and 2 stars and senior executives. And so of course we were all alerted. This was a big deal. What are they? The interesting thing, I know now what happened is that, so the next day, that email was wiped from my computer. I never saw it again. And then every meeting I went to at the headquarters, which I did to every month, no one talked about it. And that's
so. Did you ever try and raise it? Did you ever sort of say, "Excuse me, what about that? Go fast"?
Yeah, well, right. And that was my job, safety of flight. So I could have and maybe should have, but I knew how things work. When it was wiped from my computer, I knew instantly. Okay. And I've seen this in other areas where someone divulged classified information on an unclassified system, and there's a procedure for that where you basically don't talk about that. You remove all the data, you do damage control to make sure our adversaries don't get that information. And yeah.
So crucially, that was what told you that this was known about to the US government. It's not US tech, but they clearly know about it.
Well, I also have done a little research, so I'll tell you this. So it was wiped from my computer. At the time, I didn't know what agency had authority over that information, but I assumed it was under a special access program, and it was. And what happened is, through sources I have, that there was a concern that was there was a question: was it adversary tech, or was it unknown origin tech? And that's why they pulled the email, is because they didn't know.
Okay, this is important too. I can accept that because this is not anything we've ever seen before, and we don't need our adversaries to get this. Okay, so that makes sense, wiping out the emails. You're going to call conspiracy, some of you. I get that. This man is in the know. He's dealt with these kind of events over and over and over again. So he as an insider, knows the procedure, and so is not jumping on a conspiracy bandwagon here. It's valid of why they did this, but the information's out there. Yeah, I get it. This isn't proof yet, but this is as stellar an inside man eyewitness as there is, and he's going to be in the November 13th hearings. I'm getting excited about these hearings. I really am. This is superb. This is fantastic to see. How blessed we are to have this information right now.
And if it was adversary tech, that would have been a big problem. And so they didn't want it going out on a secret network when that should have been more classified, top secret, even compartmentalized if it was adversary tech. And so that's legitimate. That now I realize that's fair. It's still not good that the safety of flight issue that we the commanders, the admirals in charge of all the operations and the people had to basically shut up about it. And we forced the pilots to mitigate the safety threat on their own. And that's why I've come out, is that that's wrong. We need to openly acknowledge that this is out there, and not just in the military, but civil. That's what Ryan Graves is doing with Americans for Safe Aerospace, and I'm on his advisory board, is we just got to open up and be clear-eyed about the safety concerns, the security concerns, and the potential benefits in terms of research and development. So, but yeah.
There's a great moment in your book where, and I laughed at the irony of this, where I think it's Dick Cheney, when he was a very senior official in the administration. He was the guy at your graduation ceremony from the Naval Academy who literally handed over your graduation certificate. And correct me if I'm wrong, is that the point where you as an officer swear an oath to the US Constitution?
Whoa, actually, Ross, I'm glad you got that far. But so, and this is interesting to me because that was I had been in for 4 years at the Naval Academy. You actually swear your oath to the Constitution on your very first day there. So your first day as a freshman, and it's not even a freshman, you actually go through a summer boot camp, and then you become a freshman and you enroll or you start classes. So your first day there, the summer boot camp before your 4-year undergraduate experience, is where you swear your oath to the Constitution. I did that in 1985 with my dad, who was a reserve captain. And I just got to do that with my daughter this last July, who is now in her first year at the academy.
All right. I want to sincerely emphasize something. We swear loyalty, our oath of loyalty, not to a person, but to our Constitution. If anyone comes out in our country and wants us to be loyal to them instead of the Constitution, we know they're off track. It is clear. The Rear Admiral of the Navy, Tim Gallaudet, has just indicated that the military swears oaths of loyalty to the Constitution, not to the President of the United States as a person, not to the Congress of the United States, not to any other organization, not to the industrial military complex. We swear loyalty to our Constitution, which guarantees our rights. Thank you for sharing this information with us on Veterans Day. It's why we honor you, veterans. Okay, let's keep going.
But that's where you swear an oath. And then Dick Cheney, though, gave me my commission, which was, okay, you're no longer a midshipman, you're now an officer in the Navy.
So the reason I wanted to ask you that question is because I think this is tied in with why you're taking such a strong leadership position on the UAP issue. And I want you to explain to our audience, when you're an officer, or when anyone joins the military, they swear an oath to the US Constitution. And Article 1 of the US Constitution enshrines a very noble idea that the executive arm of government, everything in the executive arm of government, is accountable to Congress. And that's enshrined in your beautiful document, that document that we don't have in English law in Australia here or in the UK where I was born. Essentially, the Constitution enshrines a very noble idea that there is accountability to the Congress. And the thing that really strikes me about this whole UAP issue, at the heart of it, is that there's been a failure, an abrogation of accountability, that somewhere along the line, a decision has been made that Congress and even presidents won't be read into whatever this secret is that they're covering up about unidentified anomalous phenomena. Now, I don't want to lead you, I don't want to take you in that path unless you're comfortable doing it, but is your oath to the US Constitution intrinsic to why you're taking a leadership role on this issue?
100%, Ross. I dedicated my life to this, and I believe in the document, and again, I served for nearly 40 years under that oath, and this is exactly what's going on. Is that this UAP cover-up and secrecy is absolutely disregarding that element of the Constitution. It's unconstitutional, and it gets to the extent in some cases where unelected officials are overseeing these programs that are being hidden from Congress.
We honor you, veterans, for swearing that oath of loyalty to our freedoms in the Constitution. We do not swear loyalty to people in our country. We swear loyalty to our country. What a beautiful point on this Veterans Day. It can't get clearer than that. The Constitution is being disregarded, and we need, as citizens, to do something about it. This is why we are making these videos, etc. But again, I will emphasize, in the past, we have heard past presidents being angry for people not being loyal to them. And that doesn't matter. It is not about loyalty to a person, be it president, Congress, the judicial system, or otherwise. It is to our Constitution. Let's keep that foremost in mind, please. It's going to be important for the next 4 years.
And they're being prevented from their oversight responsibilities. And that's just such a problem. It's ridiculous. It's insane. And yes, exactly. It is my life of service and oath to the Constitution is absolutely what's driving this. I mean, in addition to a number of other factors like intellectual curiosity. We're not alone. This is the story of the century, as I talked to you about last year. And why are we not? Why are more Americans not talking about it? And I'll make this point, okay? So a lot of people are wondering what's going to happen. Is the government just going to keep control? It's not politically savvy under whoever gets elected in the Americans 2024 election to acknowledge we can't control our airspace and water space, and we're being visited by entities we don't even know their intent. Okay, that's not really politically good for any administration. However, the more constituents that want to know and want their elected officials to disclose, the more it will be politically favorable. So that's what we need to be doing. And so I applaud you and your journalistic expertise and efforts to get this out there. And the more we do this, and you've looked at this trajectory, it's almost amazing what's happened in the last decade, last 5 years. And so let's keep this up. The hearing I will be a part of in a few weeks, and every other next step is going to only increase that.
Amen and amen. Let's keep going. Truly, this is the message we've all been needing without question. It's exciting. The intellectual curiosity, that alone should be getting our whole nation involved in this. For that reason alone, we need to twit the major news shows. We don't give a damn about the Bachelorette. Quit distracting us from the real good stuff, the UAPs. Who are they? What are they? How can we learn more about ourselves, about our nation, about our world, about our cosmos, etc.? Man, that's where the game is being played. Don't let television distract you from that. I hope they lose all their ratings if they don't change, and let's all come on to YouTube where we can watch great programs like Ross Coulthart interviewing fantastic people, veterans, politicians, UAP researchers, etc. This is what it's all about right here. I love this interview. I am thrilled that Ross Coulthart waited until Veterans Day to put it forward. Thank you, Ross Coulthart. You are a gem among gems. I'm right there with you. I'm going to help spread the word and share the excitement and the knowledge and the spirituality. And I get it. There's going to be some who roll their eyes and say, oh, God, another one of them. Yes, I am another one of them. And I'm not going to relinquish it because that's a serious part of this, as we will see, I suspect. And I am going to keep talking about that and bringing it in my analysis as I find time. Yes.
Now, what's the question that you'd most like Nancy Mace to ask you in the forthcoming oversight hearing? What's the thing that should most be drawn out of you?
I can't talk about that right now. Sorry, Dave asked me.
You can't blame me for trying.
No, all good. I'm glad.
And the secret conspiracy continues. You can now accuse him of being a conspiracist and withholding information from us if you want to. But that makes us want to watch the hearings, right? Or at least want to watch the aftermath and the commentaries. There's a lot of YouTubers who are going to do live shows. Richard Dolan and Down to Earth with Christian Harloff and others. The Black Vault, I'm quite sure. I know Citizens for Disclosure is going to do some stuff. So this is all exciting. We will get commentary out as we are able to. I've got to work that day, but I will be producing a video, I'm sure, or 2 or 3 or 4 on it, because this is exciting times. And gosh dang it, we get to live in them. Woohoo! Yeah. I love this.
You did. I brought it up. It's good, but no, we're still working that out, and that will all come out. And again, I mean that's pretty high profile. I got that. I'm taking it very seriously. But when asked, I absolutely said yes because I think it's the right thing to do. And so I'm excited and proud to be able to represent that issue in front of the American people.
You did mention that you've had people approaching you, and I'm fascinated with some of those stories because I've heard a few of these myself. I was talking to an old submariner from the Australian Onslow submarine fleet, who,
really,
and they were telling me that they detected on sonar an object moving unbelievably at close to the speed of sound underwater, and I said that can't possibly be right. Have you heard stories like that from submariners?
I've heard one. And interestingly, and it's very credible, and interesting. But this is important. Okay, I think we all have to make sure we're clear-eyed about this, and so about observations and witness accounts. And I'm not discrediting anybody or throwing a lot of sensationalism either way. But here's something I learned from a young submariner is that, and I've been on a sub twice, but for small, short duration cruises. But I didn't know this, that the acoustic sensors on submarines can detect aircraft if they're at low altitude. So, okay, if you got a helicopter, so they're very noisy, by the way, going 100 knots. Well, then oh my gosh, if you're an untrained sonar operator and you see a helicopter going at 100 knots, you might think that's something anomalous. Well, not really. So it's important when you hear reports to make sure you fact check and you get all the information you can.
How cool is that? I mean, you can't help but love this man. This is real hard-headed attempt to be scientifically, factually correct. And yet That doesn't disprove the anomaly, but there are circumstances, mitigating circumstances, that we must be able to rule out before we say UAP. And so to know that someone of this caliber, intellectually, militarily, as a citizen, a retired Navy Rear Admiral who has his head on right, man, this is fantastic. I'm going to buy this man's book and read it now. I'm convinced I need to read his book. This is the type of stuff we're interested in. This is where we want to go with this. And I love the level-headedness. I love the ability to say, okay, now let's not get sensational. Let's be real. Let's keep it on the real, whatever real is. You know, Donald Hoffman is telling us some interesting things on that score. He's challenging reality as far as that goes. But yeah, this is fantastic. I love this. Everything about this interview thrills me personally. If you're not thrilled, you're not paying attention. These are the kind of people in leadership in the UAP research that we are gathering. It's going to happen. I love both these men.
Because this individual submariner was in the 1980s operating in the North Atlantic at a deeper depth during a very significant North Atlantic storm where there's a high ambient noise level. So there was nothing this contact could be confused with. And it had all the signatures of a Russian torpedo because it approached at a rapid rate but then slowed down, which torpedoes don't do. And they thought because of its rapid rate approach, they went to crush depth. That was their SOP, standard operating procedure, because they really believed it was a Soviet sub launching an attack on them, which is insane. It was an old sub too. They were not happy doing that and not comfortable. And so his story went like that. And then, of course, this object, now it stopped and it went around to their stern and followed them and then rapidly accelerated out of the scene. Now, back in the 80s, we know of no technology that could have done that. What was that? So it wasn't a helicopter. It wasn't a misidentification with something like that. That was the anomalous report that I got from this submariner. And I can't explain it either. And I've heard there's others, but submarine information and operations are so highly classified with non-disclosure agreements signed by everybody on the force that they're hard to come out and find.
But I guess the point that you're making there is a very important one, because the risk of misunderstanding, the risk of interdiction issues underwater are as acute as they are for people like, Ryan Graves and FA-18, F-22 pilots in the air, that essentially it could only be one mistake where, say, an American submariner commander or a Russian submariner commander basically thinks, holy hell, we're being attacked by a Russian submarine or an American submarine. It could start World War III.
My very first impression here with this is how grateful I am that we are being careful, that we're being realistic, that we're not just sensationally throwing all kinds of stupid poop out there and not being realistic, not being cautious, extremely cautious. And this is so vital because we, unfortunately, in our world right now, we really do have the ability to destroy this earth. There's nothing that should give us that chance. Therefore, we have to have checks and balances. We have to be realistic. We have to not just meagerly triple check our data and the anomalies. We have to quadruple, septuple, and quintuple it. We have to make as sure as we can. One fatal error and it's over. So I greatly appreciate knowing that in our military, this is the thinking. This is reassuring for me at this point. I'm not trying to be naive. I'm saying we're getting this from an inside source. And how about that submarine anomaly? That's the first time I've ever heard of that. That's astonishing. This is great stuff. So another piece of the puzzle, another piece of the mystery that makes it even more fascinating from my point of view.
If we don't know for sure what those objects are. And that's why it's so important that we explain what these objects are. Is that something you agree with?
I do. I absolutely agree that we need to research these more and get a better understanding for them, for both the national security implications and as well as just the science and potential technology advancements we can make from them. So yeah, and in fact, I've begun a correspondence with Robert Hastings, who's well known for his book UFOs and Nukes, and I mean, yeah, that is well researched and fairly accepted now that we know this about these interactions, and it's interesting to me because I wouldn't call it a coincidence, but what an interesting correlation there is where we see so many potential interactions of UAP and nuclear ships. So I just gave you a nuclear subs example, but we have the Nimitz and the Theodore Roosevelt. I personally have heard an extraordinary story from a chief petty officer on the USS Enterprise, or Eisenhower, the ship that was recently in the Red Sea combating the Houthis. This ship on an earlier deployment about 20 years ago, the senior leadership, this petty officer, chief petty officer, all witnessed a UAP in the middle of the strike group, basically. And this, I know I think you're looking into this, Ross.
I know the guy you're talking about, and I mean, basically, what he describes is he's a group of 7 people standing on the flybridge near the bridge,
correct,
looking down at. They were looking at takeoffs and landings on the aircraft carrier.
Something I've done quite a bit.
And they looked across to, I think it was a cruiser-shaped, cruiser-sized ship, and there was a gigantic craft hovering over the top of that ship.
That's right.
That all of them saw. And I'm still in the process of trying to verify that to corroborate this gentleman's account. But I'm really pleased he's reached out to you because I'd like to see his evidence taken. And one of the dilemmas, Tim, I'll be honest with you, is I don't feel safe bringing people like that to AARO, to the Pentagon's UAP investigation office, because under the previous leadership, I think it discredited itself by allowing itself to be perceived, rightly or wrongly.
More witnesses. Now that's an astonishing encounter. But we have encounters like this in the academic books of the academicians who are interviewing UFO people, experiencers from around the world. It's not just the military. It really isn't. So this is amazing that there are actual eyewitnesses. Now, they've all signed the DNIs. Do not disclose. Do not instruct. The non-disclosure. The non-disclosure. The NDs, whatever you call it. So we're not going to get any information from them, but they have to do that to keep our country safe. I get that. I genuinely do. Just because there's a few skeptics out there who say, show me the proof or I won't believe. Well, we don't give a damn if you don't believe. Don't believe then. But we would rather have our country safe. This is one of those issues, man. It's a tight line that we're walking on. But it's not just the military that are experiencing this, so are civilians around the world. What would happen if we can amass all this evidence? And it is being done. Books are coming out by many different people on just this topic. And it's changed through the years to becoming more and more increased, and more high-level officials are beginning to see it. Something seems to be a buzz, if you'll pardon the pun.
As an organization that was only interested in disinformation. So there are many people like that serviceman that you've mentioned who would like to come forward with very, very credible accounts. And the dilemma is, where do they go?
Right. That's right. I know a good number of people like him that do not trust Arrow right now based on their past actions. But ultimately, I'm going to give the new leadership an opportunity. I'm not gonna characterize where they are now. Either way, I have friends who vouch for that individual, and so I'm in fact, now that my clearance is reinstated, I'm looking forward to meeting with them and seeing what they might have to say and where they might be going in the future.
So, Tim, one of the things that I think distinguished David Grush's testimony, along with Ryan Graves and Dave Fravor, was that they all gave evidence and insisted on giving evidence under oath. They swore an oath. Would you be prepared to do that when you give evidence to the Congress?
No, of course. I will have to swear an oath. That's just the procedure. And I will. I mean, that's just by nature. I'm going to do that and tell the truth and swear to it. I've never gone out in public as a government official intending to do otherwise. So yes.
So you've said previously as well that you would quite like to see, as well as yourself, you'd like to see Lou Elizondo deposed under oath, as well as Christopher Mellon, where in a public hearing, they could be asked what they know in a way that allows them to speak for the first time publicly about the full truth of what they know within, obviously, national security constraints. Now, to my knowledge, Lou and Chris, they're not being asked to give evidence at this hearing. Is that a disappointment for you?
I don't know. I still don't know who the final list of witnesses will be. And I won't characterize that as a disappointment. It's, first of all, whatever the committee wants to do, they'll do. And whatever Chris and Lou or any other witness decides to do or not is their decision. So I'm not going to characterize that either way. I don't think it's appropriate.
All right, that's fair. That's fair. He's giving us a lot of information here just in this interview to digest and to stay excited and to stay interested and to sharpen our intellects and get us on the research bandwagon, looking up information and assessing what's valid, what's not, etc. It's a boatload of work. And the more hands in it, the more favorable the outcome is going to be, regardless of whether we get full disclosure or not. This is moving forward with or without the government. What our concern is that our government's checks and balances are maintained and Congress retains its proper power. Everyone in the United States should be interested in that, or we're going to be subsumed and undermined. And with our loyalty to our Constitution, we as citizens have the right to demand that does not happen. There are checks and balances in our government that have been threatened in the past. We can't allow that. So I'm just saying, this is a very encouraging interview from my point of view. I really am enjoying this. Truly magnificent. I love this man.
By the way, Lou's published a terrific book. Chris has been this incredible advocate and on the Hill and with others in the DoD and the Congress. So those two individuals, we can't give enough praise for the courage they've shown and the work that they've undertaken. So I'll just leave it at that we should be grateful for what they've done for our country, because a lot.
And I will publicly say right now that I am one of those who are grateful for Lou Elizondo and all he's done. Even though he's made some mistakes, it's all good. We're all human. But the man is incredible. And so is Chris Mellon. And so is Tim Gallaudet. And so is Ross Coulthart. And so many, many others that I should name but can't for the interest of time. This is gathering momentum. And I like that. Now, regardless of the outcome of the hearings, I will tell you right now, my personal view is I am going to keep persisting. I am going to keep putting as much time as I can into doing responsible commentary and research and sharing of information. I personally don't want this sensationalized anymore. That was the disinformation campaign. I love the fact that we have a level-headed, realistic, retired military veteran here on our team who is determined to keep it real. I'm with you 100%. Let's go, baby. Let's go. Yeah.
A lot of what our discussions now and my being here with you today probably wouldn't be possible without what they two have done.
Absolutely. So you tell a great story about how you met astronaut Scott Carpenter in your book, and you recall President John F. Kennedy's 1962 speech at Rice University, where he told a crowd of people that American astronauts would land on the moon by the end of the decade. And you talk with some emotion, I think, about the fact that Carpenter had actually done an underwater survey. He'd done an extraordinary piece of research underwater where he'd stayed underwater for a huge amount of time. And it made you think of the famous line in JFK's speech that we choose to go to the moon in this decade and do other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. And you talk in your book about the irony of how Carpenter told you that exploring space is a cakewalk compared to doing the same in the ocean. And it really underlines the point that you're making in your book, and you've made in a lot of your public commentary, that what you've learned as an oceanographer is how unexplored our oceans are, and is a large part of the UAP mystery, you believe, in our oceans.
I do. And, I've written a white paper on this for the Soul Foundation, their first white paper. This Soul Foundation is the Stanford-based think tank that is advocating for more UAP research and policy development, and which I wholeheartedly support. And and in this paper I wrote titled "Beneath the Surface, we may learn more about UAP by looking under the ocean than otherwise." And I state this exactly, that we've only mapped about 25% of the ocean seafloor on this planet. And we've not even explored 5%, maybe, or not 10%, between 5 and 10 of the ocean volume with a remotely operated vehicle, which is extraordinary that we don't even know that much about our own ocean.
How many of us, and I'm going to put me in this also, did not realize that? Now, last night I made a point on my live to show a current scientist at CERN who said we don't know hardly anything about our own universe, at the maximum 4%. Now, we just heard this man who spent his life on the oceans studying weather, being familiar with submarines, state that we don't even have 25% knowledge of our own oceans. Could that be where the UAP are hiding? And they're not worried about it because we simply don't have the capability to find them there. Again, I'm going to bring out this time and again because we, in our own vaunted arrogance as human beings, think that we are gods and masters of the whole universe, and we don't know very much about our own home. And yet we stupidly keep doing things to destroy that home. Our arrogance is going to be our undoing. This was astonishing to me. If we don't even know hardly the floor of the ocean, let alone the volume, etc., man, I'm telling you, in the face of the abyss, in the face of the mystery, is awe. The awe comes because we strive, we want to know, but we can't dictate what we know because it's not enough. That's important to keep in mind. We are but the students still. We're not the masters of the universe. It's a very important disclosure that he just made about our oceans that now has my brain buzzing on where I'm going to go do some research. Very cool, very interesting, kind of shocking to me.
And I knew this from my job at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And our program to explore the ocean was one of my favorite because we were discovering new species every year and new corals, new fish. We found a new type of killer whale in Antarctica in 2020. I mean, we're not talking about...
I've got to underline this. There's a great story you tell in your book where one of the jobs you had was to do the soundings in the Persian Gulf when the Iraq War was happening. And the maps that you were relying on to guide vessels safely in and around the Persian Gulf, some of them were Admiralty UK maps from the 19th century. 1898, I think, was one of them. And the fact that the American military is launching a war in the Middle East, relying on maps from the British Army from over 100 years previously is just extraordinary.
No, it was, and exactly. In fact, the Gulf War in 1990, our aircraft carriers had this very small area to operate because the charts, most of the navigational information, the bathymetry was unknown. Like you said, it was 19th century. So, and when you're an aircraft carrier, because I've driven one, I was a deck officer on the USS Kitty Hawk during 2 combat deployments in the Arabian Gulf, that you have to have a lot of sea room because aircraft need lift. And to get lift, you have to go fast. And that means 35 knots. And you don't really slow down fast when you're a 1,000-foot warship. So, and 100,000 tons. So that we needed a lot of sea room. We needed good maps or charts. And so what I did, for what it's worth, about, on this topic of the unknown ocean, learning more about UAP, if we discover the ocean more, is I mapped a lot of the Persian Gulf in my first operational sea tour with hydrographic sonar and an oceanographic ship. And then I came back later during the second Gulf War in 2003 and navigated off the charts I made personally. So that was a nice full circle. But you're right, the ocean's so unknown.
With our greatest technology, with our superb capability and all, this man who spent his life on the ocean, testing it, mapping it, etc., says we don't know a lot about our ocean. What else don't we know a lot about? We don't know a lot about a lot. We need to use that as a basis for approaching this UAP subject with the idea that, what can I learn? Not screaming for evidence or disbelieving if you don't get your way. That accomplishes literally nothing. There's a learning curve that we're involved in, apparently, obviously, and we need to have the humility to say, okay, let's keep learning, let's keep understanding, let's keep enlarging our contexts. When we enlarge our contexts, we improve the probability of acquiring the truth. That's a very important key that I operate under, and I would advise and hopefully encourage a lot of people to keep doing it in that manner, like this gentleman does.
And we know we're seeing a fair amount of UAP activity. It's been reported. Richard Dolan has a book coming out on all the UAP activity in and under the ocean that has been recorded over time, and it's about 600 cases over the last few centuries. A compendium of this, which is really worth getting. And I've seen the advanced copy of that, and it's remarkable. With that in mind, and knowing how big the ocean is and how opaque it is to our observation.
Congratulations, Richard Dolan, for about the greatest shout out on our greatest day, Veterans Day, that you could possibly get from one of the truly greatest veterans there is. I'm impressed. I will be buying your book and reviewing it. I have seen his video on his USO research. He's pretty humble about it, but 600 cases, and he has talked about a couple of them. But again, a completely new angle, not the interstellar, not the interdimensional. What about this Earth right here? Now that we know we don't have a lot of information on our oceans at all, after so long of studying them, you may balk and say, oh, come on, it will only take a week to figure all that out. Yeah, really? Well, then go do it. Go show us. These guys have been doing this for over a century, and they still don't have 25% finished. That's astonishing. That's humbling. That really is. So I'm excited for Richard Dolan's book. I'll give an advance shout out. I'm encouraged to buy it from watching his own video. But now that he gets a shout out like this, Richard Dolan, you're the man. He's one of our fellow UAP YouTubers, and he's got a great show. He will be doing a live broadcast of the hearings. It'll be fun to sum up and see what all of these various YouTubers have got to say about the hearings. I'll be very interested in assessing everything that happens with them.
Observational systems, there might be a lot more out there. And in fact, Ross, I just went to the National Academies. I'm a member of their Ocean Studies Board, and I gave them a presentation last week on this. And I made the statement, hey, these are phenomena that we're seeing in our ocean. You're the authoritative ocean science body in the U.S. And if you really want to know what's going on in the ocean, we should be looking at this. And they took that on board. I mean, they received it respectfully. I think it's so non-traditional that average oceanographers are going to have a hard time with that. But like we talked about in this idea of thought leadership, I think it needs to get out there. And I'm going to have to make this statement often to get it more accepted over time.
So, Tim, can I get a clear statement from you about what your belief's the wrong word, because that's almost a religious faith thing. What do you know to be the case? What is your conclusion about the notion of there being a non-human intelligence engaging with this planet?
Right. So I have no personal interaction with any entities like that. Never seen or experienced a UAP, as a witness firsthand. However, one, I had this experience with Navy data on a secret network, which has come out to be validated in the New York Times and elsewhere. And so you have that. And then, of course, now you and I are both in a network of people that are very credible, that we've named names already, and I'm personally friends with. And I know their pedigrees better than the average person in the public because I worked in the agencies they worked at. David Grush, I had officers working in the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency under me. I had you have Brian Graves working on the USS Theodore Roosevelt. I had a ton of sailors on aircraft carriers. I was on an aircraft carrier. You have David Fravor. I had many people in squadrons supporting them with weather. They're all the real deal. Jay Stratton, I mean, I worked with the Office of Naval Intelligence and know the last 5 or so commanders of the Office of Naval Intelligence, on and on. And so all these people who are coming out, Carl Nell, I know the agencies they come from, and I totally respect their credibility when they say the statements. I have access to the knowledge. I have knowledge of the program, of the information, and I know how the government works.
That's what gets me excited. This is not just a fly-by-night amateur operation at all. This is really, there are more and more being able to take this seriously with real data as it occurred. The oaths of secrecy and all of that noise, those eventually, by the by, I suspect, will get away from us. I think more information is going to come out one way or the other, and we're going to be in it. We're alive right now. I shouldn't even put that in the future tense. We are in it. And to know that this caliber of personnel and people, normal people as well, working on this, more and more are joining. We live in a fabulous time, man. Heads up and chins up. I am excited to be a part of this.
For 40 years. So when these people do it, I totally trust it. So yeah, I know a lot of people say, hey, like one of these guys is, well, I won't name names, but okay, have you seen the craft? Have you seen the bodies? Okay, no, I've not, but I know enough about how things work. And I have many other people I will not name that have had access to the programs. And all of that makes me firmly believe what's going on, what we're covering up. And I'm coming out only because of my position as an authority, PhD, former agency head, undersecretary, someone like me, people like me have to come out and give these individuals top cover for the courage they're showing in speaking up and seeking to overturn this government cover-up.
That's really important. That's really important. The top brass are recognizing that they too must become involved. And this is very encouraging for all of us. I am very excited for the future of this entire amazing mystery. This is quite good. I think I'll stop here. I'm not going to cover the whole interview. I want to say what a thrill it is to honor our veterans on this Veterans Day. I am so grateful for our veterans. I am so grateful for my freedoms and for the loyalty to the Constitution that our military supports for our benefits. We, the citizens, it's government of the people, by the people, for the people. Then let's stay active and let's maintain loyalty to the Constitution of our United States. So thank you, Ross Coulthart, for this fantastic interview. Thank you, Tim Gallaudet, for being a witness at the hearings on the 13th and for sharing some of your most incredible and exciting information and letting us know where you stand on this issue. I don't speak for all of the YouTubers out there, but this YouTuber, I'm right there with you, shoulder to shoulder, my brother. This is fantastic. Thanks for watching the BYP Responds. I will return with more as I find it. Have a great day.